Secret Service.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another of my James Bond film reviews. Today I'm taking a look at the 1969 James Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The film is directed by Peter Hunt and it stars George Lazenby, Diana Rigg and Telly Savalas. Okay, this time round, Bond, who is desperate to catch up with Blofeld. He's been chasing him for 2 years. There's been no sign of him. He is essentially taken off the case by M. And he goes on a vacation for 2 weeks. He ends up meeting Diana Rigg's character, Tracy. They have a bit of a whirlwind romance. There's love blossoming between them. And in between, Bond just can't let the Blofeld case go, and he does a little bit of investigating, and he digs up some information, and he learns that Blofeld is working atop the Swiss Alps, if you like. He's got his own therapy centre going, and Bond decides to gate crash. This obviously puts him at risk, as well as his now true love, Tracy. Right, what are my thoughts on Her Majesty's Secret Service? Ooh, well, this is a bit of a complex one, really, in many ways. This is obviously the first Bond film with no Sir Sean Connery. Now, I suppose we've got used to Bond changing over the years now. It's happened a few times. It's quite exciting now when we get a new Bond, and we're all looking forward to seeing who the next new Bond is going to be after Daniel Craig. But at the time, I'm not really sure how the world would take it. A new Bond. Well, in actual fact, they took it quite well, because this film was, in actual fact, a pretty big hit, and I think it was the second biggest hit in the world when it came out that year in 1969. And made, I think, 10 times its budget or something like that. So it was actually a very, very big hit. Even though there was a lot of negative press around it, especially George Lazenby, the British press, as it is, was very negative towards him, and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of negativity surrounding it, I suspect, that probably soured it a little bit. And this has always been, it felt to me anyway, the odd one out in regards to James Bond films. It's probably one that I have seen the least. I have seen this one before. Again, mainly in the background on bank holidays, that kind of stuff. But I've always kind of, I don't know if you'd say it, given it the respect it deserves. I'm not sure that's completely accurate. But I think it's fair to say I've dismissed this one in the past as okay, it's that one film with that one actor that played Bond once. But actually, this film has a lot going for it. It's, I think, one of the Bond films that sticks closest to the source material, and that's the book. I think it also confuses things a little bit. Now, I suppose if you know your Bond, and I only know this through research, really, that Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and You Only Live Twice is like a trilogy of books. And they should be kind of read in that order. Now, so You Only Live Twice should come after this film, but they didn't. They filmed You Only Live Twice first, for whatever reasons. So when Bond meets Blofeld in this film, Telly Savalas' character, it appears that they've met for the first time, whereas we know that's not true, because I didn't realise that, and I'm thinking that it was niggling me watching this, because I'm thinking when they kind of meet each other and they reveal, they understand who each other is. Bond knows that he's Blofeld and he knows that he's Bond. In my head, I'm thinking, well, you would both know anyway as soon as you saw each other. As soon as Bond turned up to this resort therapy centre and saw Blofeld, they would recognise each other straight away. And I was just like, I don't understand this. It was a bit odd, and that's the reason, I think, is because they stayed so close to the source material. And in the books, they hadn't met at that point. That was the first time they met in this book, sort of thing. So it kind of, harms the film a little bit and confuses a bit if you've just come from watching You Only Live Twice, where they've just met, and then in this they kind of don't know each other until Blofeld figures out who he is. So it's got that going for it. It's got this real. It's got a lot of I don't know, emotional stuff going on in this. It's actually quite a romantic film because the central core story here is Bond falling in love. And obviously they've explored that in other films, particularly the Daniel Craig ones. And you could argue as well, No Time to Die in many ways is a bit of a remake of this. But the death kind of is reversed at the end of that film. And so it's got that going for it. So it feels different, but as soon as the film credits roll at the start, it feels different anyway because there's no title song being sung on this one. So it feels like you're watching a new Bond experience almost. They've kind of tweaked the format a little bit, and I suppose I've never really fully analysed Lazenby's performance as Bond before. Actually, I think he does quite well, especially when you consider he wasn't an actor. He was a model, essentially. And there are many videos on YouTube that you can watch of him telling stories how he got the role of Bond. It's probably more famous how he only did one Bond film. And there's a few stories out there, that he riled up the producers, but also I think the one that you kind of hear the most is that his agent advised him poorly, you would argue, because he'd signed a 7-film deal that to just do one Bond film because the spy craze was ending. The 70s were about to start. The spy film craze was ending, and you should walk away from these movies because it's going to destroy your career. And that's what he did. Foolish, I am sure many of you would agree, but that's essentially what happened, I believe, anyway, and that's certainly what I have, found out from researching and watching this and reading that sort of thing. But it's got some really good moments in this film. Some great skiing scenes, a couple of decent driving scenes. I think George Lazenby does well with the physical stuff. He's actually very convincing with a lot of the physical fights and stuff. And I think you could argue he doesn't have the same swagger as Sir Sean Connery, but he does a decent job here. You could argue actually he's doing a bit of an impression of James Bond from what we've seen before in movies, but he pulls it off quite well, I think, and he does a pretty decent job. I think what we should be celebrating as well is Diana Rigg as Tracy. I mean, right up there, I think, with one of the best Bond girls ever. I was staggered how great she was in this. I just couldn't remember how great she was in this, but absolutely brilliant. And the scene at the end when they get married and we know what happens, she gets shot down, was very, very moving actually, and I forgot that. And I think that's probably George Lazenby's best acting in the film, in that scene when Tracy gets killed. He does really, really well there. There's a lot of debate about him breaking the fourth wall at the beginning when he says, this didn't happen to the other fella. Some people really hate it. Some people like it. I'm not bothered, to be fair. It didn't bother me at all. I could understand why purists wouldn't like it, but it didn't really bother me, if I'm being particularly honest. And yeah, as Bond films go, I think this certainly is very, very solid. A niggling thing that I couldn't just quite shake while watching this is what this would have looked like with Sean Connery doing it. Wow, I mean that's something when you actually take a step back and think about that, and when you consider obviously that he came back for the next one, Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah, if he'd have just carried on, done this and Diamonds Are Forever and then quit, how different would this film have been? Would it have been better? I don't know. I'll leave you guys to debate that in the comments. But for me, I just couldn't get away from that niggling feeling that, wow, I think Sean Connery would have been outstanding in this one, because it's so different in regards to a Bond film. You know, it's got a different vibe, a different feel. And yeah, I think it would have worked really quite well. So yeah, quite enjoyed this one, guys. I think there are issues with it. I don't think it's right up there with some of the best Bond films, certainly over the first few that I've seen, but definitely worth checking out. And I'm glad I rewatched this one, because it has definitely been a while. So thanks for joining me, guys. Diamonds Are Forever is coming up very soon, so don't forget to join me for that review, and of course, plenty more content on the channel too.